When I refused to babysit, my neighbor falsely accused me of child abuse and got me banned from volunteering. She smirked. That's what happens when you say no. So I found her actual criminal record and made flyers that landed on every porch. I was standing in the cramped office of the Eastwood Public Library, my volunteer badge already pulled from the lanyard, sitting on the desk like it had been caught doing something dirty. My supervisor, Carol, wouldn't even look at me. She just kept repeating the same line the district HR had given her. Until the investigation is closed, we can't allow you to continue in any capacity. My ears were ringing. I felt like the walls were pushing in on me. A report for child abuse, filed against me. And the worst part, I already knew who did it. Because just 2 days earlier, I'd told my neighbor, Jenna Torrance, that I couldn't babysit her kids anymore. I'd watched them maybe 5 times, always as a last-minute favor because she'd show up at my door crying or frantic or telling me she just needed 1 hour, please, please, I'm begging you. I hate confrontation, so I kept saying yes, even though her kids tore up my apartment and she never paid me. But earlier that week, when she banged on my door at 6:45 a.m. asking me to take them right now because she had an important appointment, something in me snapped. I told her no. Calm, direct, for once in my life. Her face changed instantly. Her mouth curled into this smug little smile. She said, "Oh, you'll regret that." And then she walked away like she already had a plan. I didn't think she meant anything. I thought she was just being dramatic. I didn't know she was the kind of person who would actually follow through. So when the school counselor called me that Friday asking if I could come in to discuss concerns that had been raised about the Torrance kids' safety in my apartment, my stomach dropped so hard I nearly threw up. I told them I'd barely spent time with the kids, let alone hurt them. But once a mandated reporter files something, it goes straight into the system. And once it's in the system, any background check flags it, even if it's baseless. Which is why I was now standing in that library office, being quietly told I was suspended from the only thing in my life that made me feel useful. When I stepped outside, Jenna was sitting on her porch, smoking, watching me. She called out, "Rough day." I didn't answer, I couldn't trust my voice. Then she said the words that burned themselves into my brain. "That's what happens when you say no to me." And she smiled, like this was funny, like my whole life wasn't being set on fire by her lie. I walked back to my apartment shaking so hard I could barely get the key in the lock. I sat on the couch and stared at the wall, realizing that this wasn't going to go away on its own. Jenna wasn't just mean. She was dangerous. And she felt untouchable. I don't know what made me do it, anger, desperation, maybe instinct, but I opened my laptop and started searching her name. First Google, then county records, then the state court's database, then the federal one. That's when I found it. Her real criminal record. The one she had obviously worked very, very hard to bury. Charges I could barely blink at. Things 10 times worse than anything she'd accused me of. Things that would make every neighbor look at her differently. Things that would make the school and the police take her seriously as a threat. And as I scrolled through page after page of her past, a cold, steady thought formed in my mind, something I had never felt before. I knew exactly what I was going to do with it, and I knew she would never see it coming. I moved to Eastwood, Ohio about 3 years ago, right after my breakup with Nate. We'd been together almost 5 years, and when he told me he just didn't see a future anymore, I packed up and left Columbus the same week. I picked Eastwood because it was quiet, cheap, and far enough away that I wouldn't accidentally run into him at a Kroger and fall apart all over again. I didn't know anyone here. I didn't have family nearby. So I leaned into anything that gave me a routine, morning walks, volunteering at the library, grabbing the same iced coffee from the same small drive-through every Saturday. My life was simple, maybe boring, but safe. Predictable. It was the first time in years I wasn't constantly bracing for something bad to happen. And then Jenna moved in across the hall. The first time I met her, she was crying on the floor because she'd locked herself out while carrying groceries, and her 2 little kids were screaming and fighting in the stairwell. I helped her get in. She hugged me like I'd saved her life. I thought she was overwhelmed, maybe lonely. I felt sorry for her. That's how it started. She'd knock on my door at all hours, sometimes morning, sometimes 8 at night, asking if I could watch the kids for just a little bit. She always had some dramatic emergency. A job interview, a panic attack, her ex texting her threats, her mom in the hospital. I felt awful saying no, so I kept saying yes. But every single time felt off. She'd be gone for hours. Sometimes the kids were dirty and starving. Sometimes they'd just tear through my apartment like they'd never been told no before. I'd try to ask Jenna about rules, bedtime, allergies, anything. She'd wave it off with, "You're overthinking. They like you," but she never paid me, never even offered. And she started calling me things like my built-in sitter and my on-call good neighbor. It made my skin crawl, but I shrugged it off. I didn't want conflict. I didn't want to be the bad guy. I should have known better. There were red flags, big ones. Nights where I'd hear her screaming at someone over the phone. Days where she'd disappear and not answer the door even though the kids were clearly inside alone. Times she'd come home with pupils blown wide, talking a mile a minute, jittery as hell, promising me she'd make it up to me someday. Still, it never crossed my mind that she'd go as far as filing a fake abuse report. I thought she was messy, irresponsible, maybe dealing with addiction, but not malicious. Then, slowly, she started pushing more. She'd drop hints about needing serious help with the kids. She'd say things like, "You're the only person I trust. You wouldn't bail on me, right?" And once, laughing, she added, "Just remember, I know where you live." I tried distancing myself, short answers, no eye contact, not opening the door immediately. But she'd always find a way, catching me in the hallway, flagging me down in the parking lot, knocking nonstop until I opened up. The morning I finally told her no, it wasn't dramatic. I was exhausted, running late, and she asked me to take the kids for a few hours while she handled something urgent. I told her, "I can't today." Just that, calm, direct, her whole face changed, like flipping a switch. She didn't yell, she didn't cry. She just smirked and said, "You'll regret that." I didn't understand what she meant until the school called, until the investigation landed on my record, until the library suspended me. And now, sitting in my tiny apartment, scrolling through the criminal charges she had hidden under a different last name, I realized something. Jenna wasn't overwhelmed. She wasn't unstable. She was dangerous, calculated. And she'd done this before. This wasn't an impulsive lie. It was a pattern. And for the first time since moving to Eastwood, I wasn't afraid of her, I was furious. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on my couch with the courthouse website open, clicking through every document tied to Jenna's old last name, Kessler. Once I realized she'd changed it after moving here, everything clicked into place. The way she acted like nobody could touch her. The way she talked down to teachers, neighbors, even the building manager. The way she treated me like a resource instead of a person. All those emergencies. All those frantic knocks. All those times she claimed someone was after her. None of it was random. None of it was chaos. She was used to manipulating people into giving her what she wanted. And if anyone pushed back even a little, she treated them like an enemy to be destroyed. The next morning, I walked out to check my mail and saw her standing in the hallway talking loudly on her phone. She watched me the entire time, eyes narrowed, lips curled up like she knew she'd already won. She said into the phone, loud enough for me to hear, "Yeah, the school took it seriously. I guess they have to when kids say they were scared." Then she laughed lightly, like it was an inside joke. I felt my stomach twist. Not because I believed she'd win, but because I finally understood she expected to. I ignored her and stayed focused on the next step, clearing my name. I called the county investigator handling the report. I explained everything, how I barely knew the kids, how Jenna had a history I could prove, how she was retaliating because I wouldn't babysit. The investigator sounded sympathetic but basically said, "Until we talk to everyone involved, I can't dismiss anything." Which meant weeks. Maybe months. Meanwhile, Jenna kept escalating. That same afternoon, I went to the laundromat in our complex. While I was folding clothes, Jenna walked in with her kids trailing behind her. Instead of ignoring me, she made a point of standing right next to my dryer. She took out her phone and snapped a picture of me without even trying to hide it. I froze. "What are you doing?" she shrugged. "Documenting. For what?" She smiled again, the same tight, satisfied smile she gave me the morning of the false report. "You'd be surprised how much evidence people overlook." I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her phone. I wanted to walk out, but instead I swallowed it and kept folding. Because now I knew something she didn't. I had proof. Real, legal proof that she wasn't who she pretended to be, and she had no idea I was sitting on it. Over the next week, she kept pushing. She told other neighbors I was under investigation. She loudly told the mail carrier she felt unsafe having her kids near me. She even tried to corner me in the hallway to talk about what the kids said, like I was supposed to comfort her. But the worst was when I went to the library to pack up the last of my things from the volunteer room. I was walking out with my box when I heard someone call my name. It was Mrs. Henderson, one of the regulars, the sweet, elderly woman who always knitted at the back table. She looked nervous. She said quietly, I heard something about you, from your neighbor. She said you hurt those children. I felt like I'd been punched. Did you believe her? She looked away, guilty. I didn't want to, but she seemed so sure. That's when I realized the damage was spreading faster than the investigation could keep up. Faster than any official system could fix. And Jenna knew it. She thrived on it. But she didn't know that I had already downloaded every page of her record. She didn't know I'd found the mugshots, the probation violations, the restraining orders. She didn't know that what she'd done to me was nothing compared to what she'd done before. And she definitely didn't know what I was planning next. The twist didn't hit all at once. It unfolded in small, horrible pieces, starting with a knock on my door at 9:30 p.m. I thought it was Jenna at first. I almost didn't open it. But when I looked through the peephole, I saw two people standing there, one in a county windbreaker, one with a clipboard. My heart slammed into my ribs. Child Protective Services. Not for her. For me. The woman with the clipboard introduced herself calmly, almost apologetic. We're following up on additional information that was submitted today. Additional information. My chest tightened. They asked to come inside. They were polite but firm. They wanted to assess my living environment. They wanted to ask a few follow-up questions. I knew I had nothing to hide, so I let them in. I tried to stay steady. But my hands were stiff and shaking as they looked around, taking notes. Asking whether I had ever babysat the Torrance kids. How many times? Under what circumstances? And then the woman asked, "Do you have a personal relationship with their mother?" I said, "No. She's my neighbor, that's it." The man glanced at the tablet he was holding and then asked the question that nearly made my knees give out. "She told us the two of you were involved in an altercation last week. That you threatened her." I stared at them, frozen. "What? No, that never happened." But they kept going. "She stated you have a history of emotional instability. She said you've been fixated on her family. She reported you for harassment." Every sentence dug deeper, twisting reality into something unrecognizable. Jenna wasn't just doubling down, she was escalating into a whole new level of fiction. And then came the part that made everything click. She told our office that you attempted to access her sealed court records. My skin went cold. She knew, somehow she knew I'd found her criminal file. The woman even added, she expressed concern you might try to retaliate against her due to her past legal history. Past legal history. The one she'd hidden. The one she didn't want anyone to know about. I realized right then, she wasn't scared. She wasn't worried. She was preemptively discrediting me, cutting off any chance I had to expose her. When the agents finally left, after an hour of polite interrogation and unnecessary notes, I stood in my living room staring at my own walls like I didn't recognize them. I walked to the window, hands still trembling, and looked across the courtyard. Jenna was on her porch again, sitting in her cheap folding chair, smoking, watching. Our eyes met. She smiled, slow, knowing. A smile that said she had already made her move. She raised her phone and pointed it at me, like she was taking another picture, or maybe just pretending to. Just to remind me she could. My whole body flooded with a cold kind of fear that felt nothing like the anxiety I'd been drowning in for weeks. This was different. This was recognition. She wasn't impulsive. She wasn't panicked. She wasn't lashing out because she felt threatened. She was running a playbook she'd used before. Destroy the threat before the threat speaks. Smear the reputation before the truth comes out. Sabotage the witness before the evidence surfaces, and she was good at it. Terrifyingly good. I sank onto my couch, heart pounding, and finally understood the full weight of the first twist. This wasn't a neighbor feud. This wasn't petty revenge. This wasn't about babysitting. This was a woman with a long, practiced history of manipulating systems into protecting her and punishing anyone who got too close to the truth. And now that she knew I had her secrets, She wasn't going to stop. Not until I was completely silenced. After the CPS visit, something in me shifted. The fear didn't disappear, but it hardened into something sharper, something focused. Something that wasn't going to just sit back and let Jenna keep wrecking my life piece by piece. I realized something crucial that night. I couldn't beat her by reacting. She planned too far ahead. She'd already set the narrative in motion. If I waited for the system to fix this, I'd lose everything before they even got around to interviewing her kids. I needed a plan. A real one. Something strategic, steady, undeniable. Something she couldn't twist or spin or preemptively poison. So I went quiet. I stopped confronting her. Stopped reacting. Stopped letting anything show on my face when I saw her. The next morning, when she smiled at me in the parking lot like we were co-conspirators in her own little game, I walked past her with my keys in my hand and my expression blank. Because the truth was, I already knew my first move. I spent the next week gathering everything I could, my evidence. But I wasn't reckless. I wasn't going to stoop to her level and make up claims. I stuck to what was already public or already documented. Every time she asked me to babysit, every message she'd sent implying I was her on-call caregiver. Every time she'd left her kids alone yelling for her through the hallway. The time-stamped video from my doorbell camera of her pounding on my door at dawn. The mugshots tied to her old last name. The probation violations, the restraining orders. Especially the one involving another mother. She'd lived near 2 counties, over nothing illegal, about collecting public records. Nothing illegal about saving my own messages or footage. I kept everything sorted, labeled, backed up in 3 places. And then I did something I should have done from the very beginning. I talked to people. Not to gossip. Not to smear, to gather truth. I spoke quietly to the building manager, asked if anyone else had complained about Jenna. He nodded, eyes tired, and said, "Half this complex, honestly, but she's slippery. Always turns it around." I talked to the neighbor downstairs, the one Jenna told people avoided her, because she's jealous. Turns out the real reason was that Jenna had once accused her of stealing from her mailbox when the woman wasn't even home that day. I didn't ask them to testify. I didn't pressure anyone. I just listened. Took notes. Patterns started forming, patterns I knew the right people would take seriously if given the full picture. And that gave me the second part of the plan. Because Jenna didn't fear me exposing her to a judge or a cop. She feared something much simpler, other people knowing who she really was. That's when the idea hit me, something so obvious I actually laughed, alone in my apartment when it clicked. Flyers, not harassment, not defamation, just information, public record. Summarized, factual, documented, and placed in the one place Jenna couldn't control, the public, but I wasn't going to print anything yet. Not until I had something stronger, something that would cover me completely. So I went to the courthouse in person. I requested certified copies of every charge under her old name. They didn't blink. They didn't question why. These were public documents. I paid my fees, signed my forms, and walked out with a folder so thick it barely fit in my bag. This was the backbone of the plan, but I still needed the spark. The piece that would guarantee everything I released was undeniable, unspinnable, and impossible for her to twist into another accusation against me. And exactly 1 week after the CPS visit, I got that spark. A phone call. From a number I didn't recognize. From someone who, as soon as she said her name, made every hair on my arms stand up. Someone from Jenna's past. Someone she absolutely did not want resurfacing. Someone who said, "I heard she's doing it again, and if you're fighting her, I think we need to talk." And just like that, the second twist was already forming. Her name was Marla, and the moment she said, "I used to live next door to her," I felt something deep in my chest lock into place. Not fear, recognition. Her voice was steady, calm, too practiced for someone who just stumbled into this by accident. She told me she'd gotten my number from the building manager. She'd called him earlier that day asking if a woman named Jenna Torrance lived there now, because she'd heard rumors online that matched someone from her own past. And then she said, "When I saw your name attached to hers, I figured you were either her new target or someone helping her. Either way, I had to call." Target. That word landed heavily. We agreed to meet at a small diner 2 towns over, neutral territory. I half expected her not to show. But she did. She walked in wearing a navy windbreaker, hair pulled back in a low ponytail, posture straight in a way I recognized immediately. She was in law enforcement, and not just casually. She placed her badge on the table the moment she sat down, county sheriff's office, the same county Jenna back when she lived in 8 years ago. "I'm off duty," she said. "This isn't official, but you need to know what you're dealing with." She ordered coffee, then looked me dead in the eye and said, "She did the same thing to me, almost identical." For a moment, I forgot to breathe. "She targeted my partner first," she continued. "Then me. Lies, accusations, reports to my station, reports to child services, anything she could twist. And every time she got caught, she'd claim we were harassing her. Everything she does is premeditated. She builds a narrative weeks before she strikes." My stomach twisted. "How did it end?" Marla leaned back, face tightening. "A restraining order." But that only happened after she targeted a local teacher and almost cost her license. She moved right after that. Ran, really. She leaves the minute someone figures out what she is. I told her everything, about the false report, the CPS visit, Jenna taking pictures, the flyers I hadn't printed yet, the criminal records I'd found. She listened without interrupting, nodding slowly, like she was checking off boxes on a list. Then she said something that stunned me. "You're not the first person she's tried to destroy. But you might be the first one she didn't expect to fight back." She opened her bag and slid something across the table, a USB drive. I stared at it. "What's this?" "Proof," she said. "Every recorded call, every filed statement, every complaint she ever made in my old jurisdiction. All legally public. I collected everything after she came after me. My supervisor let me keep it when the case was closed. I figured someday she'd do it again." I felt something cold and electric run under my skin. She wasn't giving me rumors. She wasn't giving me gossip. She was giving me a pattern. A documented, undeniable pattern. One that matched everything Jenna was doing to me. "She thinks you're isolated," Marla added. "That's her method. She picks people who don't have a big support system, people she can smear before they even realize what's happening." I sank back into the booth, the diner lights buzzing faintly overhead, realizing the full weight of the twist. Jenna wasn't improvising. She wasn't some chaotic, unstable neighbor. She had a system, a strategy, a history. And now, for the first time ever, someone who had survived her was putting a loaded, legally sound arsenal directly into my hands. But then Marla said one more thing, something low, quiet, deliberate. "Just be careful. When she realizes you're not falling apart, she'll escalate. She always escalates." And right as she said it, my phone buzzed on the table. A message from an unknown number. "You really shouldn't dig into things that aren't your business." It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't random. She knew, she always knew. I didn't respond to the text. I didn't have to. Because by then, after talking to Marla and seeing the way her hands tightened around that coffee cup when she talked about Jenna, I understood something crucial. Jenna didn't target me because she needed help with her kids. She didn't target me because she was overwhelmed. She didn't even target me because I told her no. She targeted me because she preys on people like me, quiet, isolated, accommodating, the kind of person who will doubt themselves before doubting someone else. And once I realized that, the rest of her behavior finally snapped into horrifying clarity. The next evening, I heard shouting outside. Not a fight, just Jenna's voice, too loud, too bright, talking on her phone on the balcony like she wanted the entire complex to hear her. Her tone was manic, buoyant, almost rehearsed. "Yeah, I'm handling it. People around here believe anything. If she tries to say anything, no one's gonna listen. I already made sure of that." Her voice rose further, tinged with a sick kind of pride. "It always works, you just have to hit them first." My breath caught in my throat. Because that was the truth of her, the real, chilling truth. She hit first. Every time, not out of fear, not out of self-protection, not out of desperation. Out of strategy. She used lies as preemptive weapons. She used systems like chess pieces. She used people like disposable shields. Every restraining order filed against her, she spun it into harassment. Every neighbor who complained, she smeared them first. Every authority who questioned her, she overwhelmed them with dramatics until they backed off. And the kids, her kids, weren't props of necessity. They were props of convenience. Marla had warned me. She uses her children as leverage, as sympathy, as validation. She's done it for years. Hearing it again in Jenna's own voice made my stomach turn. I stayed hidden behind my blinds, watching her pace, twirling her cigarette between her fingers, laughing into the phone like this was all a mild inconvenience, like I was nothing more than a temporary obstacle she'd already solved. Then she said something that froze me completely. She's not a fighter, she never was, I picked right this time. Picked, not met, not asked. Picked, like she'd been scanning the building for someone she could crush easily, someone without a spouse, without family nearby, without a big circle of friends, someone who blended into the background, someone who wouldn't fight back until it was already too late. And then she clarified it even more, her voice lowering. The trick is making sure they break before they think. The second they start getting confident, you push harder. I felt sick, because that was the reason. The real, cold, terrifying reason. Jenna didn't want compliance. She wanted dominance. She needed to break people before they realized she was the real threat. She wasn't messy or overwhelmed. She wasn't unstable or emotional. She was purposeful, calculated, predatory. Someone who weaponized chaos with a surgeon's precision. Someone who needed someone like me, quiet, polite, too gentle for conflict, because breaking people like me made her feel untouchable. She destroyed reputations, not because she felt threatened, but because she enjoyed the power of dismantling someone piece by piece. Someone like me was fuel for her, a way to prove she could still manipulate the world into believing anything she wanted. That was the reason. That was the monster behind the curtain. And that was the moment I stopped fearing her completely. Because once you see the truth, once you see the villain without their mask, the fear dies. And something colder, stronger takes its place. Resolve. And now that I understood exactly who she was, I knew how to end this. Once I understood exactly who she was, something in me settled. Not peace, not yet, but clarity. A cold, steady calm that made planning feel easy. Clean, necessary. I waited 3 days. 3 days of absolute silence from me. 3 days of her spinning her little stories around the building like cobwebs. 3 days of her thinking she'd already broken me. Then, on a Wednesday morning, at 5:15 a.m., I put my plan into motion. I started in the leasing office. Not with accusations I'd learned from her. You don't start with emotion, you start with paperwork. I slid a neat stack of certified court documents across the manager's desk. Mugshots, probation terms, written statements. Prior investigations she'd triggered. False reports. Retractions. I didn't have to embellish a thing. His eyes widened. He looked physically ill as he flipped through the pages. Then I added the USB drive Marla gave me. This contains audio recordings, call logs, and documented behavior matching what she's been doing here, I said. Public records, all of it. He swallowed hard. We had no idea. I know, I said. But now you do. I didn't ask him to evict her. I didn't have to. Next, I walked across the street to the elementary school. I asked to speak to the principal and the guidance counselor. They looked tense. I knew Jenna had already painted me as some danger lurking next door. So I sat down, opened my folder, and said, "Before you hear anything else about me, I want you to see who filed the report." 20 minutes. That's all it took. They didn't say much at first, but their faces said everything: shock, discomfort, a dawning understanding that they'd been manipulated. The counselor finally whispered, "She didn't tell us any of this." "She wouldn't," I said. "Because she only survives when the truth is hidden." Then I went to CPS. Same routine, calm voice, clean documents, chronological events, certified copies, patterns spanning years. The investigator who had visited my apartment looked stunned and ashamed. This changes things significantly," she said. "I know," I replied. "And we'll be closing the investigation against you," she added quietly. "There will be a new one opened elsewhere." I didn't smile, I didn't celebrate, I just nodded. The last step was the flyers, not scandal sheets, not rumors, not revenge fantasies, just facts. Public record information about a resident in this complex. Her legal name, S. Documented charges, probation history, past false reports, court summaries, no commentary. No insults, just truth. I posted them on community boards, laundry rooms, and mailbox areas, all places Jenna regularly used to spread her lies. Every flyer included a QR code linking to the public court documents. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't embellishing, I was informing. By noon, people were talking. By 3 p.m., Jenna burst out of her apartment screaming at everyone in earshot, pointing at flyers, waving her phone, threatening lawsuits, sobbing, yelling, pacing like a cornered animal. But something was different now. No one believed her, not anymore. Neighbors avoided her. The building manager told her to come to the office immediately. The school district called her that same afternoon. A CPS car arrived the next day. And the day after that, Jenna's windows went dark. Curtains closed. Silence. She disappeared within 48 hours, moved out overnight, didn't say goodbye, didn't knock on my door, didn't even try to leave one final threat. Because she knew she couldn't beat the truth. Not this time. A week later, the library reinstated me. Carol hugged me so hard I nearly cried. She apologized over and over. I walked out with my badge clipped back around my neck, sunlight warming my face, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Control. Self-respect. Air in my lungs again. And as for Jenna, well, the complex still talks about the woman who tried to burn down the wrong life and ended up running from her own past instead. As for me, I don't open my door for anyone at 6:45 a.m. anymore. Not unless they come with coffee, and a damn good reason.